How to create a stylized character in 3D. Hi guys, in this series of videos I'm going to try and show you how I go about creating a entire character. Well, in this case it's just the head of the character, but I'm going to try and show how I do the entire thing from original concept sketch to final render. So we're going to do pretty much everything. We're going to do sketching, then I'm going to do a blockout stage, and sculpting, retopology, texturing, hair and effects, shading, final render, lighting, everything, all that stuff. I'm going to try and show you guys how I do all of that, how I approach it. And these aren't tutorials like necessarily like step-by-step tutorials. This is more like I show how I work. Because when I started doing characters, my main problem was I never knew how to start. What should I do next? Should I now be doing texturing, or should I now be doing retopology? Should I be doing what comes next? You know, I didn't have like I wanted a list of things that I could do, like what's next on the list, and I realized that's not how it works. You don't. No character is the same really. There's basic rules. There's like you do your sculpting, then you do your retopology, and you normally do your texturing after you've done your topology and stuff like that. So with this, I want to try and show how I like to approach a typical stylized character, and kind of talking about the different approaches you could perhaps have taken, and showing what I think are easy ways to achieve certain results, and trying to just show how I work, because a lot of people have asked me how do I achieve this type of stuff, and I thought it would be nice to kind of just talk about it and make a series of little videos. So this is the character that I'm going to make in this example, but I want to emphasize that you can apply these kinds of techniques to pretty much any stylized character. If you're doing realistic characters, then the stuff I'm talking about here also applies, but to a lesser degree, because realistic characters are they require a lot more hair splitting. Like, they require a lot more precision, and you have to know like the values of the skin tones, and there's a lot more science involved if you're going to do a realistic character. But this is stylized, and it's a lot more fun for me and for a lot of people. I think it's just the rules are a lot looser, but you got to know the rules before you can break them. So these are the rules, kind of. So yeah. So this is my character, and this was my wonderful original sketch. Yes, it's very professional and wonderful, and I'm so good at sketching stuff. Anyway, so on the right hand side you can see my shape breakdown, and this is what I want to emphasize in this video. This is the blockout phase, and before you even start working in 3D, you have to try and make a little sketch, or at least find a concept online perhaps. You have to know what you're going to make. Do not start your character if you don't know what it's going to look like. At least have a sketch, at least have an idea. Just, I don't know, because it's so easy to get demotivated if you don't know what you're aiming for in the first place. So this is what this part of my workflow is all about: shapes. We're trying to get the basic silhouette, the volumes, the shapes, those things. And if you look at any online tutorial on how to draw a typical character, I mean, if you're an artist, I'm sure you've seen these types of things. It's like they always start with shapes: circles, cylinders, squares, triangles, those type of things. They always start with that when they're drawing, when you're like drawing a character. That's what when you draw anything really, you start with just the basic shapes. And in 3D, I've learned that that's exactly the same. You don't just start like with the tiny pores and details and try to do all the tiny little stuff. You start with the basic shapes. So that's what I'm going to do in this first tutorial. We're going to just start from a cube, subdivide it, and just mirror it, and start working on just the basic. And I'm sure if you've been using Blender for a while, then you know how to do this stuff. This is, again, this isn't a step-by-step tutorial, so I'm not going to explain exactly how I subdivided and what hotkeys to press. You'll have to find other tutorials. There are plenty of excellent tutorials on that type of stuff. This is just showing how I get my silhouettes and my stuff using basic subdivided cubes and cylinders and stuff like that. It's really it's straightforward. There's nothing to it. You have your idea and you start literally building your character in 3D. Don't worry about intersecting geometry. You can see I'm already using two different pieces of geometry, and they're making this horrible line where they're kind of crashing through each other, intersecting like that. That's fine. Don't worry about that, because I've got a plan. So yeah, just do it. Just have fun, make a great looking character, and go for exactly as if you were drawing it in 2D. Just do the same thing in 3D. Use basic shapes and go ahead and have fun. Just pull stuff around. So here I'm doing the nose, and it's just a blob of grey stuff, whatever. And I've skipped it there. Just pulled a bunch of stuff out and kind of got something that looks remotely like a nose, because I know a little bit later I'm going to start sculpting this. So you just want your basics. You just want the bare minimum. You do not under any circumstances want to go into details. Just shapes. That's it. So these are the eyebrows, kind of trying to find a nice shape for the eyebrows. Oops, there I switched to the skull. That's another thing I do a lot. I chop and change between different parts of the face to if I get bored, if like these eyebrows don't look right yet, but I just jump to something else and work on that for a while. And it helps, I think, because you're sort of working on everything at once. So perhaps the nose doesn't look right, but you're not sure why. So you go and work on the eyebrows a bit, and then you come back to the nose and think, oh, it's because the eyebrows were too small that the nose looks so weird. So you chop and change a little bit between the different areas of the face. That's kind of useful. Just don't do it too drastically. Just like don't start working on the toes of the foot of the character while you're actually supposed to be finalizing the face. Just kind of just jump around a little bit to loosen up and find the right relationship between the parts. That's a key word. Relationship between the different parts of the face. That's pretty important. So and it goes for a lot of stuff. If you have a bit of something that you're working on and it doesn't look quite right, oftentimes it can be because of the stuff around it. So here I'm working on the neck, and you can see that perhaps the neck doesn't look right because the head's too big. So you go back and work on the head, and suddenly the neck looks right again. And coincidentally, the neck on this character is pretty huge. I think in retrospect I might have made it a little bit smaller. It would have looked better, but at the time I thought it was looking pretty cool. But again, it's just if something isn't looking right, consider working on whatever is right next to that thing to kind of get the relationship between the two looking right. Same thing with pretty much everything. The size of the nose might be looking a bit large because the eyes are too small, or the neck might be looking too thin because the head's too wide, or stuff like that, you know. So it's just a small thing, but I've learned it does help. So you chop and change and switch between the different stuff, and you know what I mean. So the ear looks like an alien ear right now, but I've got a plan. Don't worry. So it's just a subdivided cube, of course, makes it easier. So I'm just pushing and pulling all these words around, and the ears are looking too big, so I made them a little bit smaller there. And working on the shape of the skull here, so I'm kind of tapering it off towards the top of the head like that. Typical cartoon style. It's kind of inspired by the Disney style, I think. Disney, perhaps Pixar, one of those, you know. It's there's no particular style I'm going for. It's just you know, what I've seen in popular movies and animations and stuff nowadays. So yeah, here I'm just doing a little bit more pushing and pulling work on the jaw and the chin, and that it's an important part of the face for this character, because he's supposed to be this masculine type of heroic, or perhaps a villain. In the final render, he actually looks more like a villain than a hero, I think. That's just me. But yeah, you're trying to get what kind of a person is this? You're trying to get a mood out of him in this stage. So the blockout stage might seem unimportant, but it's actually pretty important, because you're doing a huge amount of work already in kind of finding your character's character. You're trying to find whatever it is that makes this guy appealing. So definitely I'd encourage you to feel free to pull stuff around and just go crazy and find that spark that makes your character unique. This here is hair. I'm doing like a single lock of hair, like a tuft of hair that I'm gonna. Now this is geometry hair, so this is the final render is gonna have real, actual particle hair. But this is important even for stuff like hair, eyebrows, eyelashes, even if it's a female character, especially stuff that you know you're gonna do with real particles later on. It's important to kind of block it out anyway. Like, just do it with geometry. Block out the hair, because you want to see what the character looks like with his hair on. Many times I've done characters that look brilliant, they look wonderful without any hair. And then the minute I add in the hair, it looks like crap. Because again, that whole thing with the relationship between different parts. Like, a character might look wonderful without any hair, but then when you add the hair, suddenly it looks like the head's too big or whatever. So definitely try and visualize whatever you're going to do. Literally actually model everything, even if it's not going to be in the final render. So it doesn't have to take long. You don't have to spend hours and hours modeling the hair. Here I'm just duplicating, copying each tuft of hair over the head, and just getting a nice position, getting it to look nice, trying to find a nice length, even though I know in the end it's going to look different a little bit, perhaps a little bit different style, perhaps a different color. Here I'm using a darkish black type color. In the end I made it red. So yeah, it's just to visualize what it's going to look like, and that's important. A lot of guys, beginner character artists, they're good at their anatomy, they know how to sculpt a character, but what they don't always know is the design aspect. It's the relationship between the different parts, how to exaggerate certain stuff specifically, and stuff like that. That's very important. Anatomy and the science stuff, that's really important, yeah, but I would argue that even more important is the sort of the relationships between the different forms and all of that. And that's why all these tutorials that show you how to draw a character, that's why they all start from basic shapes, because they know, the people who make these tutorials know that design is a huge part of making an attractive character, or anything really. Even if it's a vehicle or a building or anything, you have to have your design, your groundwork, the basic stuff right. So yeah, if you're gonna do a character, blockout is important, and that's why I made this video. Originally I didn't want to include it because it's so boring, and I mean you don't even see much yet, but it is important, and it's really it's probably the most important part of making a character, is to make sure that you have a character. You don't want to start sculpting immediately. You want to have a basic shape. Now I do know that if you some guys like to sculpt the blockout as well. I used to do that, and I do it sometimes if I have to. But I find that this method, we're actually modeling it with like subdivided cubes and geometry and stuff. It's pretty effective. With Blender's modeling tools anyway, it's amazing, because you're able to get so fast, and you're able to sort of see what it's going to look like before you even started doing any real work. It's kind of like sketching in 3D, you know. And a lot of other guys, professionals, they do this. I mean, if you're really talented and you have tons of experience, and then you can start sculpting your guy. You start literally actually sculpting the face from scratch, from a sphere, you know. But why do that to yourself if you don't have the experience? Why try to torture yourself like that? Much easier to just do it this way. I mean, it's the way people do it when they draw. Why not do it in 3D, right? Right, so just here I'm just looks like I'm just fixing the shape of the skull there, whatever that is. I don't know. Yes, the eyebrows, and yeah, now I'm doing the eyelashes. Not the eyelashes, the eyelids. So that's a big thing for beginners who want to do characters. Eyes. The eyes of the character are really, really tough. And I'm not going to lie to you, it does take practice to kind of get nice eyes. I struggle with it myself, especially when doing realistic characters. Cartoony characters a little bit more easy. But here you can see I'm really actually modeling the eyelids with a couple of planes. So it's really just model the eye, just model what you see. Take a look at your character reference and literally just model it. Don't try and join it to the head. It won't work. I mean, it's so hard to get a nice looking eye. Why would you actually try and join it to the skull in this face? Just model it and stick it into the head there until it looks like it has the right shape. That's what I'm doing here. I'm just going through several iterations of what I think the eye should look like, and trying to find that nice balance between eye size and eye shape, and you know, and that's again Blockout. It's just model it with a couple of planes, stick it in there, and you won't have to worry about it so much when you start sculpting. Here I'm working on the jaw, not the jaw, the cheekbone. And really, I'm not even an anatomy expert, by the way. I don't even know the names of half the stuff I'm modeling. I just model what I see. I don't recommend that. I recommend that you actually go and do a little bit of research on your anatomy. But what I want to highlight with this video is that if you play around a bit with your Blockout and stuff, it's surprising what kind of appealing stuff you can get if you're willing to just experiment a little bit. So here I'm starting to separate the stuff so that I can join them together using a Boolean operation. I think it's called Boolean, whatever. It's a modifier. So I'm going to use the Boolean modifier to join all these meshes together to make one single mesh, because then that's what I'm going to start sculpting in Zbrush. And here I'm just doing some last minute corrections on the eyebrows and the nose, joining them together. So here I'm selecting the jaw section of the face, and I'm adding a Boolean modifier and setting it to union, and then selecting the skull mesh, and so that's effectively joining the skull to the jaw using this modifier. And if it leaves any extra meshes behind, you just delete them. So it left the skull mesh behind, but now you can see I actually have the jaw and the skull joined together as one, and that's what I'm doing with all the meshes. I'm joining the ears, and everything's got to be one single mesh in the end. So that I mean, and it looks really ugly. I mean, you can see there's a lot of triangles and stretch geometry, and it looks really bad right now. But don't worry, when you start sculpting, all those problems disappear. This is only about getting the forms and joining it all together, so it makes your life easier when you start sculpting. So here I'm joining I think I'm joining the neck to the skull right there, and joining the eyelids in as well. set it to union, and select the mesh that it has to join to. Click apply, and delete the any extra meshes that might have been generated. Okay, now I'm duplicating the mesh and saving it to another layer. It's important to keep backups of every stage of your work. So now that it's backed up, I've gone into edit mode and converted all the polygons on the mesh into triangles by pressing Ctrl T. Then you go to File, Export, and select wavefront.obj, exporting it as an OBJ file. Enable the Selected Only checkbox, and disable the Include UVs checkbox because we don't have any UVs on this mesh. And then also export the hair. File, Export, OBJ, and then name it, whatever you want to name it. And that's it, both of them exported. Now we're going to jump over to Zbrush, and we're going to continue sculpting our character there. So that is the blockout phase done, and now we're going to go into Zbrush, and we're going to import our meshes that we've just exported from Blender. We're going to import those meshes into Zbrush, and we're going to start actually sculpting in the details. So I hope you learned something during this video, and I will see you in the next video where we will continue with our little character project. See you next time.